It is time for Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo Chapter 15 and 16. So obviously I am a bit behind here, but I'm going to be on top of it every week going forward. My schedule has opened up. But if you are here specifically for Chapter 16, there's going to be a timestamp down below. Go ahead, just skip ahead to that point. But if you are wanting to stick for both of them, then I'm going to get right into Chapter 15 right here. So the chapter opens up with Yuka here, obviously being chosen to be Japan/Earth's champion to fight Dabura. And she is having blurry vision, obviously, from the tumor that she has within her brain. And so it has progressed significantly just over the past little bit of time. And we have Mino here, who's pushing up a wheelchair and asking her, would you like to use this after all? And Yuka just says, thanks, Mino. It's actually color pages here. Yuka looks incredible. The art looks great. Yuji Iwasaka is a fantastic manga artist, and it just really captures the emotions on their face very well. Then we get a really cool color page of Tsurugi and Maru, and then we have Dabura and Yuka in the background in a plane flying in between them, which obviously we know that plane. We saw it all the way back when Maru and Tsurugi are having their conversation before their fight. We actually see it up in the space between the buildings that's like separating them as they talk, and that plane is the one that is carrying Yuka to the battlefield in Tokyo to go against Dabura. But the chapter continues. We see the plane up in the air, and it's Yuka thinking to herself that if she gets reborn, she would like to be the older sister next time. Like, after all, she spent 16 years finding out exactly what a younger sibling would like. So she'd always go easy on you. I'd let you have the first pick on the snacks. I'd make sure to teach you all the cheat codes, and now and then I'd help you with your homework. And it's funny because it shows panels of all those things that Tsurugi never went easy on her. He never let her pick first for the snacks, didn't teach her cheat codes, anything like that. So just the different dynamic here. And we get an amazing panel of her kind of looking melancholy, like a little bit happy, but obviously it's in a reminiscent fashion, which makes it very sad ultimately. But she just says, man, he was a terrible older brother. And Mino here is like, Yuka, because she kind of like slumps over a little bit. And this is where Yuka actually says Tsurugi. And Mino's like, yeah, what about him? And we see her look up, but her vision is now starting to completely go out. And she can't even see Mino's face here. So she actually mistakes Mino as Tsurugi, because she says, I thought I told you not to come. I wasn't trying to act tough. I just didn't want you to see me like this. And you're the type of guy who thinks he's being nice when he tells a girl she looks better without makeup. And she just continues saying, I swear you really don't understand how girls feel at all, not even your little sister. And Mino just thinks to himself, she's already this far gone, because clearly she is basically, I don't want to say, maybe it's kind of like hallucinating, but she's having this final conversation with Tsurugi, she believes, which actually just makes this even more sad, because we know Tsurugi is down on the ground, about to fight Maru over this whole situation of trying to get them to leave. So it's just really sad, this whole situation. Jujutsu Kaisen as a whole, it really does put its characters through torment. Gege, I love it personally, because I think from a character perspective, it really grips me and gets me to deeply care about these characters, because they're flawed. The suffering is like very real, because these type of scenarios happen out every day in the real world. Obviously outside of like the jujutsu battles, cursed spirits and all aliens and that stuff. But like the actual levity of life and what can happen, like her with her disease that she has, and just the terminal, it's a terminal illness, and it's just, so the situation is terrible. But Mino just apologizes and says he's sorry, he's holding her hand, and then we get a flashback actually of Tsurugi walking with Yuka through the forest, and he says, "Don't cry, it's not a big deal." And it says, "My friend was possessed by a vengeful spirit that couldn't be graded, and I wanted to help them. I thought I could do it by myself." So this is obviously Yuka speaking, and I don't think I would have died. She's thinking that I don't think I would have died if Tsurugi hadn't shown up, but her friend who was possessed might have. Yet he never blamed Yuka. All she could do was rely on his kindness. So he really has looked out for her as a big brother here. And I think this is really interesting, the fact that there was a vengeful spirit that possessed one of her friends, and it says it couldn't be graded, meaning it was a special grade vengeful spirit. And seemingly, I mean, I'm not going to say like Tsurugi exorcised it, because we know with his heavenly restriction, the only way you can exorcise a spirit is with cursed energy, and he does not have any. And at this point, we don't know if he has any cursed tools. It doesn't look like he did, and he's bleeding from his forehead. So obviously there was some sort of combat that ensued. My assumption would be some maybe more veteran sorcerers showed up to deal with it. I'm not sure. Maybe Grandpa, I'm not sure. But this, I just thought it was very interesting, the situation here. But then we actually cut to Tokyo, and we see a bunch of crows flying through the air. And we have Dabra here say, "Are you the chosen warrior?" And we see what looks, with the braid of the hair, it looks like Mei. That's what I initially thought when I first saw. And the crows, obviously, we know she has blackbird manipulation as her curse technique. And we see all the crows. But then they say, "No, I am but an old man. I have come to greet you on behalf of Earth's Jujutsu sorcerers before the duels." And then this is where it's revealed. He says, "I am Wee." So Mei's younger brother from all the way back from JJK. And he says he's the master of the new shadow style, which we knew was happening at the end of Jujutsu Kaisen, with Mei taking out the previous head of the new shadow style, and the new head became Kusakabe, and then after Kusakabe, Wee was in line to become the next head. So obviously that succession did, happen properly. And I think that, because I know a lot of people, especially at the ending of Jujutsu Kaisen, people overreact all the time. And if something doesn't go exactly the way that they thought it was, they treat it as bad writing. And I know the focus on the new shadow style stuff at the end of JJK got some people upset, it wasn't important, and they would have preferred to see more time with the characters and their interactions after the fight with Sukuna, which, don't get me wrong, I would have loved that as well. The ending, while I really enjoyed it, I think it could have done with another 5 chapters. And I think he would have been able to really give us those character moments while also making sure he covered those plot points. But regardless, that's not what this is about. But here we have Wee, but he looks just like Mei. So I didn't know, kind of a first initial thought was maybe he used his soul swapping to swap into Mei's body when she was passed, or he's just a hunched little old man that now does his hair just like Mei, because we know he was obsessed with her. So maybe that's the case. I don't know. But he is exceptionally creepy here, and I really don't like him. But he's here to, greet Dabra. And he says that he would like to express his gratitude to you, king from another planet. And Dabra asks, your gratitude? Why are you grateful to me? And this is where we get an above shot of Shinjuku that they're in. And this is really cool because we see two giant craters in the ground. In those two massive destruction craters are from the fight in the Inhuman Makyao in Shinjuku. And that obviously would be Gojo's impromptu hollow purple versus Sukuna. And then the other one is when Sukuna gains his domain expansion back through Black Flash and unleashes his domain on the battlefield. So it's like we still have those scars from the battle. So it's just even 70 years later, it's so cool to be able to see that just remaining from the absolutely epic finale of Jujutsu Kaisen. So Wee Wee continues on here and says that the period of peace that followed was ordinary, but it has flaws. It was flimsy. And at some point, everyone seems to have forgotten what we used to call power, what we used to call strength. And then he points to the three children in front of him, which one has his old hairstyle, one has Mei Mei's hairstyle, and then the one in the middle just has like a ponytail down the back. But these little kids should get away from Wee Wee. That's all I will say. They need to go far away, but unfortunately, they're probably part of the new Shadow Style school and being fully indoctrinated into whatever he is teaching and going on here. But he says that these children have no idea what it looks like when a living creature reaches the peak of violence. Obviously, he's referring to what he witnessed with Sukuna and seeing him, because that was Sukuna. He was the pinnacle of violence. He was the walking calamity. And obviously, we know from the very beginning of Modulo that it was stated that sorcerers on the whole have gotten a lot weaker after that time, because that's what happens during times of peace. You know, peace like something builds up to where you need a giant force of very strong people to take care of it, and then after that, there's no longer that pressure that's being put on the people to grow stronger. So naturally, it just declines over time. So that's what he's talking about here. And Wee Wee continues to say that, but I think you could show them the true terror of the curses that spill out from our very guts, which is a callback to Sukuna explaining his relation, like why he did things. He talked about he couldn't stop from basically that, exactly that. He says that the curse that spilled out from his very guts, like he felt like it was going to burn him from the inside if he didn't basically let it out. So it's very interesting, the choice of words there. I think it's on purpose. I'll try to find that panel that I'm specifically referring to so that I can at least put it up as a reference, because I know I kind of like butchered that. But Dabura continues and says that, unfortunately, I can't show you anything without an opponent, because obviously he's sitting here and no one showed up yet. And he says, unless they are truly worthy, it'll be over before the children, can see a thing. Meaning, I'm just going to wipe them out so fast, they're not even going to get a chance. So whoever shows up has to be worthy. And Wee Wee here says, not to worry, I think you will be quite satisfied. So obviously, my thought is he's using the crows here. However he obtained Blackbird manipulation, whether he is in Mei Mei's body or he did some other funky stuff, I think he's observing who is on their way to the battlefield, obviously, because he wouldn't show up if they were just sending some scrub. He knows Yuka is on the way. And by extension, well, what we come to find out is Maharaga. But that's where we get to see Yuka. Now we're up in the plane, who's flying over top of the battlefield right above Dabura. The sirens go off. The back gates open of the plane. We have Mino here just bawling his eyes out. And Yuka starts to like roll backwards. They like like unlock her wheelchair here, and it rolls backwards. And she's thinking to herself, if I get to be reborn, I'd like to be a little sister again. So even though she stated at the beginning that she would like to be the older sibling, thinking back on her time with Tsurugi, she still would do it over again as the little sister. And we see her fall out of the plane with the wheelchair kind of like falling apart. And again, we see those two craters from Gojo and Sukuna. And she thinks to herself that, and I'd want my older brother to be, and she's thinking of Tsurugi here. So very sweet, but also at the same time, it comes with the knowledge that she is impending death. So there's really no time to be like, oh, that's so sweet, because it's very double-sided. But then that's where we get a quick panel of Dabura just like locked in. And then we see Yuka falling down from the sky just above the ground, and she hits the pose. And she says, I'm sorry, Dabura. With this treasure, I summon. So we see the wolves, we see the frogs. So she has the 10 shadows, and it was a very slow burn from Gege to introduce us to some of her power at the very beginning, while making it seem like it was something totally else, because we know genetically she is she has the Zenin. Both her and Tsurugi have the Zenin bloodline. That's how Tsurugi has his heavenly restriction, because Maki Toji. So obviously it makes sense that their whole bloodline from coming down from Yuta and Maki could have techniques from the Gojo clan and from the Zenin clan, which is crazy. But she has the 10 shadows, and she summons the 8-handled sword, Divergent Scylla, Divine General Maharaga, which is so freaking hype. The way she summoned him, falling down out of the plane, hitting it right before she gets to the ground, and then sinking into the shadows as Maharaga drops above her, was so sick. It's just crazy. And I've thought about this, and maybe I shouldn't admit this, but like the 10 shadows is my favorite curse technique in all of Jujutsu Kaisen, bar none. So I am ecstatic that it is showing up in Modulo, and we get to see Maharaga. So I am over the moon, and I've thought, I don't know if any of you guys out there, have overactive imaginations, and you thought about if you've ever had a curse technique, what would you do and stuff like that. I'm willing to admit it out in the public. I'm a huge nerd, whatever, say what you want. I've thought about this exact scenario of like, if you were falling from the sky, and in the scenario I kind of thought of was like, oh, if you're like riding on Nue, because, you can use Nue to fly around, especially if you have a large pool of cursed energy, because then you can amp them to make them a lot bigger, like Sukuna did once he took over Megami. And like you drop from the sky, and then you just like drop into a shadow, just like she did from the plane. So it's really cool to see like something I've thought up just in my own imagination basically show up in the actual canon manga. So that's my own little spiel here, but we get to see in the new art style by Yuji Iwasaka, we get to see Maharaga in all his glory, coming down, aura farming, looking sick. But even before he can do anything, we see this light shining from above. And Dabura is already up in the air, literally shooting beams of light down at Maharaga. And they completely eviscerate him, piercing all the way through him. And Dabura is literally standing, they're all like stacked up like a tower that he is just standing on, looking down. And we get the narration say, Dabura Karaba's curse techniques, plural, are blank, it's kind of blacked out similar to how Fuga and Kamino for the furnace was blocked out when Sukuna first used it. So here we're not being told what this is. So don't know what it's called. I think I'm not really online like too much, but I think I've heard just people as a placeholder, you maybe use like void instead of light. So like void and light. So I guess that makes sense to me. So I'll probably just use that. Or I was going to call it just intent because it's explained that blank and light. So obviously we're seeing the light curse technique here, which first don't want to just skip over this. The light curse technique is crazy. That's insane. Any light-based powers are awesome. They just look sweet. But obviously this is exceptionally destructive. If it actually travels at the speed of light, like if this is actual light made tangible and he fires it, it's like, does it have the properties of light where it can actually travel at the speed of light? Because that would be insane. Because while it's not like it's infallible, because we know for top level sorcerers that there is a spark of cursed energy, no matter how efficient you are. Because even someone like Gojo, who had the highest efficiency ever because of the 6 eyes, Sukuna could still see a spark of cursed energy prior to the activation of a technique. So it gives you an opportunity, if you're of that level, to actually react. So you should still be able to see a spark come from Dabura before he uses these light beams. So there's that. But anyways, it's crazy because it does pierce straight through Maharaga. And I don't want to just like glaze over this because we know Maharaga takes damage. That's the whole point, is he takes damage, takes in the stimulus, the input, and the more input he gets and the more time he gets, the faster and the further the adaptation continues. So we know he takes damage here, but the fact that he was able to just pierce straight through Maharaga here, and because back in Shibuya, when Sukuna fought Maharaga, yes, he was only at 15 fingers of strength at that time. But Sukuna even used, and I'm not going off of the anime, because the anime took the fight that was maybe half a chapter, legitimately. Sukuna versus Maharaga in the manga was like half a chapter long. And they turned it into like an 18-minute fight, which, not complaining whatsoever, that was an absolute feast for the eyes. But in the manga, which is what I usually like to refer to because it is what I would consider to be the most canon, Sukuna uses a dismantle, and it's a dismantle with a hand sign and a chant. And it does not cut directly through Maharaga. It does not sever through him. It slices him and he takes damage, but it doesn't go straight through him. And then, so that is a dismantle with a hand sign and the actual activation words of dismantle from Sukuna, and it did not go straight through Maharaga. Dabura's light beams literally blow straight through him. That's insane, because Maharaga's base durability prior to adaptation is insane. The only reason we like kind of don't always think it is because he literally fought Sukuna, and then we see him fight against Gojo, and he was pre-adapted to Gojo, and he still got destroyed. So it's like, I just don't want to take away, obviously that Sukuna, not full power. I think a full power Sukuna, I think a dismantle with the chant, I think it goes through Maharaga at base. But At 15 fingers, it did not. Then that's just, honestly, that's just a fact. But here for Dabura, his light beams went straight through him. So I just want to point out the fact that this is extremely impressive. But then the narrator continues on and says that intent or void is murderous intent given tangible form, a concept impossible for earthlings to even describe in words, and this was passed down through the Diskunte tribe. So we have yet to see this, and I think obviously this is going to be the key for Dabura potentially being able to eliminate Maharaga, because it's a very similar situation to Sukuna, where he had cleave and dismantle, but once Maharaga adapted to slashing attacks in general, he then had to use the flame arrow in order to obliterate Maharaga. Here, we've already seen Dabura use the light beams, and with how Maharaga's adaptation works, he's going to adapt to not just light beams, but just the concept of light. So no matter what Dabura uses, if it's just light-based, that's not enough. Now he is unable to kill him just using that, because it says for the first time in recorded history, Maharaga's adaptation toward an extraterrestrial curse technique has begun. And that's where chapter 15 ends. So insane chapter. I'm not going to waste any time. I'm going to get right into chapter 16 here. Chapter 16 opens up with an explanation that the 10 Shadows technique, a hereditary curse technique passed down through the Zenin clan, one of the former big three sorcerer clans, so our families. So I'm assuming, my assumption is, because after Maki eliminated the Zenin clan, both the Gojo clan and the Kamo clan actually basically voted to the higher-ups to remove the Zenin clan from the big three. And it says that the Zenin clan was a former big three sorcerer family, which means they, after the events of the Shinjuku Showdown, they did actually most likely get removed. So that's pretty crazy. So Maki did successfully take down the Zenin clan. So it says that it allows the user to summon Shikigami using shadows as an intermediary, but it is currently considered a forbidden technique within the Gojo clan. So Yuka has only been permitted to use an application of the technique that allows her to draw out the abilities of certain Shikigami. So when we saw her in the beginning use the savage bite or the savage claws, that was her bringing out the abilities of the divine dogs. So she was bringing them out to basically encase her hands with their like talons slash claws, or the jaws as well. So similar to how Sukuna used Max Elephant's water to do a piercing blood type attack against Gojo, how he summons the wheel above his head to take in adaptation for Maharaga. It's the same thing. You're bringing out the essence of the Shikigami without actually summoning them. But I think this is really interesting because it seems to me that the 10 Shadows being a forbidden technique in the Gojo clan is just the fact that the technique comes from the Zenin lineage. And we know how we know how these families, how it's all about politics, power, status, all this stuff. So having the Zenin crown jewel technique in their lineage, they would want to assumedly suppress it because it was the technique that opposed their greatest technique, the Limitless with the Six Eyes, in their lineage of the Gojo clan. So I think it's really just like petty stuff here. But then we get further lore basically on Maharaga in the fact that among all 10 shadows, Shikigami, Maharaga is said to be the only one impossible to tame. So no sorcerer in history has succeeded, which we already knew that, with the exception of Ryomen Sukuna in Megumi Fushiguro's body, which we also know. And it can only be manifested in a Jujutsu battle through an exorcism ritual by dragging the target into the ritual itself. The participants in this exorcism ritual is Yuka Okotsu and Dabura Karaba. And that's where it says that Yuka Okotsu is already in a state of suspended death. Only Dabura Karaba's death, or the destruction of Maharaga, will end the ritual. Yuka Okotsu will die as well. So basically, she's in a lose-lose situation for herself personally. Seemingly, her tumor was already at such an advanced stage that she could barely stand. She couldn't really see. She didn't know who she was talking to. So her time was like exceptionally limited anyways. But if, for say, Maharaga wins, then her death is confirmed. And if Maharaga loses, her death is confirmed. So it's really not looking good for our girl Yuka here, regardless of what happens. But I would be lying if I said I still wasn't incredibly hyped, because it is Dabura, an alien, versus Maharaga. And this is where we see the wheel spin for Maharaga. Dabura's kind of up on his light beams looking down, kind of interested once he sees the Dharma Chakra wheel spin. And then we see Maharaga jump all the way up, come down with a smash. Dabura blocks. Maharaga follows up with a kick that sends Dabura kind of flying, but Dabura slows himself down by shoving his arm into the building that he's flying by to slow himself and his momentum. But Maharaga's coming up from like underneath and the side to try to cut him off for an attack. But Dabura quickly spins and hits him just with a mega light beam. This one's a lot thicker than the previous ones from last chapter. So those ones were like skinnier rods. This one is like a giant blast that goes all the way through a skyscraper. And it takes Maharaga's most of his right arm off and whole part of his torso. But immediately the Dharma Chakra wheel spins. He adapts, but then we see Dabura grab a piece of the building, the rubble, and throw it at Maharaga. But Maharaga's already regenerated his arm, grabs the big old chunk of rubble, crushes it into pieces. And then this is where we get this sick standoff where they're literally just standing in falling rubble. And Dabura thinks to himself, she summoned a spiritual being. Given the matter of the cursed spirits, this type of spiritual being must be part of Earth's unique cursed energy system. So maybe in their system, they don't have things like Shikigami, maybe, because he is unfamiliar with this. So he was familiar with cursed spirits / Kalians and a lot of the similar systems, but obviously Shikigami may not be a part of the Sumerian cursed energy system. And he continues saying, it's not just some indestructible doll made to fight in place of a Jujutsu sorcerer. It has some kind of ability. So he's already aware that it's not like it's just something that can't be destroyed. There's a specific reason he is out, and he has some kind of ability that it is trying to achieve. So they're just standing there, and then in the next panel, they're gone, and they're flying up a side of a building, and we get this incredible panel of Dabura like swinging his arm, and we get a bunch of the bing, 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 like light, I want to call them like nucleuses, like we see them charging up, and then we get a really cool panel of Maharaga's face, and you can like see where all the little light beams are shining on his face before literally obliterating. So it's like seeing, if you see like a sniper and it has a laser pointer and it points on the target and then blows through. That's exactly what this was like. But the wheel spins, he immediately regenerates, but Dabura is already on him, grabbing his Maharaga's like face wings. He's got his feet right in his face and he charges up just mega light beams and just obliterates Maharaga and the whole skyline of buildings. We see all these light arrays just blasting everywhere. Buildings coming tumbling down. We have what appears to be an aurora borealis, like the lights up in the sky. So clearly the light from Dabura's curse technique is affecting the light in the actual atmosphere, and it's giving this incredible scene over a Tokyo and its buildings that are just crumbling to the ground. And Dabura and Maharaga here are like falling through the air. And this is where Dabura is starting to put the pieces together, because he says, is it adjusting to my curse technique? Its wheel keeps rotating, then it immediately recovers afterwards. So this is really cool to see, because that was the thing for Sukuna. Yes, he had exceptional power. His mastery of Jujutsu was the zenith, but it was also his battle IQ, which was so scary. He would see things and immediately dissect them, pick them apart and understand them and counter them. Like he was just that meticulous when it came to combat IQ. And it's good to see I like seeing strong characters that are also astute in their observations. So Dabura is starting to figure it out here. And he still has only used light up until this point. So technically he's still in the clear as long as Void, or whatever that other ability, is capable of obliterating Maharaga in a single attack. I don't know if we're going to see a domain expansion. That's something that I feel like we've probably all been waiting for. We have had 0 domain expansions in Modulo, and we don't know if the Sumerians and we don't know if the aliens have domain expansions. I would like to believe they do, and since Dabura is at the pinnacle of their race, I'm hoping that maybe he will be the one to show us it. But gonna have to keep waiting. And we get the narrator saying that the Zenin clan's cherished family treasure, the Divergent Scylla Divine General Maharaga, has the ability to adapt to any and all phenomena, the ultimate counterattack, which is just, it's so sick. I love that power so much. Again, it's my favorite, not just specifically Maharaga. Maharaga is awesome. I think we all unanimously agree. Even though he loses basically every time he comes out, everyone is always just so hyped to see this dude on the panel, on the screen. Doesn't matter. He always wants the smoke, and he just fights the strongest people. So you gotta respect Big Raga here. Then we cut away from Dabura and Maharaga, and we're back to Tsurugi and Maru. Their clash has begun, and Tsurugi says that didn't know you could use a sword, and Maru says this is crosses. But then Tsurugi parries. They kind of keep fighting, doing some really cool choreography. Looks fantastic. And Maru thinks to himself, so these are the extraordinary physical abilities Tsurugi gained due to his heavenly restriction, in exchange for giving up his cursed energy and cursed technique. He says now he understands, because when Yuka first told him about his strength, he had his doubts. But now that they're actually fighting, it now makes sense. And it's there. We actually get like a question, like a self-insert question here. And it says, how is this different from physical reinforcement through cursed energy? Because we know, obviously, that's what sorcerers do. They reinforce their flesh, and that's how they're able to perform feats of great physical strength, speed, durability, all that stuff. So this is a great question, because how does it differ? Because that's seemingly exactly what Tsurugi and any heavenly restricted user is. They're just physically gifted. And the answer is that because they have no cursed energy, their movements cannot be read through the flow of cursed energy. Because we know that that is one of the fundamentals for sorcerers fighting other sorcerers, is being able to read the flow of their cursed energy to anticipate what they are going to do, how they are going to attack and move and react. And Tsurugi basically is like a ghost. You can't read anything. And he actually dashes in, is able to cut Maru on the cheek. And Maru says that this is going to be trouble, because every single attack feels like an ambush until I can adjust to it. So right now he hasn't adjusted. It's just everything feels like a surprise attack, basically. And Tsurugi wields Jujutsu by making use of the cursed energy that his cursed tool is imbued with. And he thought it was just like an auxiliary tool, since he can't wield his own cursed energy, but he gets it now because the cursed tools do not run out of cursed energy. So it probably depends on the tool's grade, of course, but still, the way Tsurugi manages to manages the pace of a Jujutsu battle is totally different from any other sorcerer, which makes complete sense. But they're still continuing their fight, and Tsurugi manages to get the upper hand, blows Maru through a building, and he says that even if it's Dabura who leaves, that's fine. So he's getting back to the whole point of wanting them to leave Earth. And now he's conceding that even if it's just Dabura, that's fine, because he is obviously the one that they simply just cannot deal with. He is too powerful to have around. So as long as he leaves, at least that would open things back up to maybe some coexistence. But Tsurugi continues on, saying that he doubts the range of a curse technique can extend beyond the planet. So with the death curse that was put on Dabura's sister, so if Dabura leaves Earth, then the ritual Yuka staked her life on will become void. So he's saying that since the ritual has begun and Yuka is staking her life on it, if Dabura leaves Earth, it will actually void the ritual. So then Yuka will not die. And this is where Maru begins to answer, and he says that Dabura won't ever go back to Samaria. He's involved in the conditions of that curse on his sister too. So it's too dangerous for him to go back into the range of the Diskunte chieftain, and even if it's just him alone. So it'd be different if the curse could be undone. He continues saying that if they could undo it with the black rope, but there's no time for that now anyways, right? Because the fight has begun. They're already at this influx point. So yeah, it'd be awesome if the black rope could work, but right now, one, they couldn't find any, and two, these things are underway. You can't change them now. And Tsurugi just says, Maru, if I win, leave Earth. Let's have a duel with those conditions. You're a warrior, aren't you? And he uses the simple domain maculation that we saw earlier when he was fighting that old geezer curse user. And Maru is just laying on the ground looking extremely, distraught, torn with himself, because obviously he doesn't know what to do. And he thinks back to when Dura fought Dabura, and he was yelling at Dabura saying that you held back, didn't you? You didn't fight with your full power. And he says that, I'm sorry, Dabura, I understand now what it's like to be on the verge of losing your own sibling. But I'm afraid to lose my friends too. And that's exactly the situation that Dabura was in. They had his sister hostage. So he didn't want to lose his sister, but then Dura was his best friend, and he didn't want to lose his friends either. So he truly understands now. And he says that I don't want anyone else to get hurt or die. But this is where something super interesting happens, because Maru's third eye literally starts seemingly talking to him. And it says, and you call yourself a warrior? Will you really insult Tsurugi like that? So what the heck is that third eye, dude? What is that? Is that... So this is something really weird. I need some more explanation. It's seemingly talking as if it's a separate entity. So I don't know here. Let me know down below what like you guys are thinking of this, because I don't know what to think. And he says, fine, Tsurugi, I'll fight with the intent of killing you. Try not to die. And we literally see Tsurugi flip sideways and start falling like gravity has shifted sideways. And he thinks like we're flipped, and we see Maru now floating with his like arms behind his back. He's just floating above the ground, which we saw a glimpse of when he fought against the curse user geezer, when he started affecting natural phenomena. And that's where we see that Marulu and Cross's curse techniques are chaos and harmony. So two sides of the same coin here, and absolutely insane. So we have two crazy fights going on right now with both of the siblings, and the stakes are exceptionally high. I don't know how this is honestly going to get concluded. I don't even know how I want it to get concluded, because it's not like Maru's not bad. Even Dabura is not bad. I actually feel really bad for Dabura, because he has been forced to fight consistently in situations that he doesn't want to fight in. He's just exceptionally powerful, so he's always the guy. He's always the one that's used as the tool. He's very, very similar to actually Gojo in that regard. Gojo was always viewed as a tool, as a monster that was just supposed to be used for his power. Now, he did his own things and they couldn't control him, but ultimately he still fulfilled his role in Jujutsu. And that's what Dabura is very, very similar. So, fantastic chapter. Both of these chapters were just great. Modulo is amazing. I'm so happy that this sequel has lived up to my expectations. And I haven't tried to put too much on it, because I'm happy to just get anything extra from the universe of JJK and anything from Gege. So even while keeping my expectations low, it has delivered even above that. So I'd love to hear what you guys think also. And also a Merry Christmas to you. I'm actually recording this. Yeah, I don't know. I don't even have a watch, but I looked at the time. It's not midnight yet, so it is still Christmas. So Merry Christmas to wherever you guys are. And also, I do have, if you want to hear me talk in depth about the Jujutsu Kaisen culling game official trailer, you can go ahead and check that video out. It's super detailed. I love to talk about JJK, so if you're a fan, you're definitely in the right place. So hope you guys have a great night or day wherever you're at, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.